Humanity has long turned its telescopes toward the heavens, straining for the faintest whisper that we are not alone, waiting for a message carved in starlight or hidden in the static of distant worlds. But when that signal finally arrived, it did not come from a faraway galaxy or some secret civilization. It came from a lone traveler, an interstellar object slicing through our solar system like a blade of mystery. A visitor named Three-Eye Atlas. For months, its strange emerald glow unsettled astronomers, its bursts of energy bending every rule we thought governed comets. But now the enigma has deepened beyond imagination. Global observatories have confirmed a staggering truth. Atlas is not flickering at random, it is broadcasting. Directed pulses of energy are being aimed straight at Mars. And in a revelation that has left even hardened skeptics speechless, Mars itself has answered back. For the first time in recorded history, we are witnessing what appears to be a conversation between a wandering messenger from the stars and a world we long believed to be barren, dead, and silent. If this is real, then everything changes. Our understanding of Mars, of the universe, and of humanity's role within it. The discovery began quietly, like all great upheavals do, with data too strange to be believed. Astronomers already knew that Atlas pulsed in precise rhythms. Its emerald light brightening and fading every 173 minutes with flawless regularity, as if following a script written far beyond human hands. It could no longer be dismissed as coincidence. Then came a pulse unlike the rest. This one did not scatter outward into the void, fading into cosmic silence. It was tight, compressed, and sharpened into a deliberate beam, fired directly at Mars. Orbiters circling the red planet immediately caught the spike, their instruments screaming as bursts of radiation pierced the thin Martian atmosphere. For several minutes, the planet glowed with an eerie green shimmer, as if awakened from its slumber. At first, officials waved it away, an anomaly, a trick of angles, perhaps interference from the sun. But then it happened again. Same duration, same direction, same power. The verdict could no longer be ignored. Three-Eye Atlas was not simply glowing, it was transmitting. It was not random, it was not blind, it was deliberate. For the first time, humanity had proof. An interstellar traveler had chosen a target for its signal, and that target was Mars. The response was not delayed by days or weeks. It came almost instantly. Satellites orbiting Mars recorded bursts of electromagnetic energy rising from the planet itself. They carried Atlas's frequency, but with variations, like a voice echoing back in a different tongue. At first, scientists called them reflections, natural reverberations bouncing across Mars's frail magnetosphere. But deeper analysis destroyed that theory. These pulses weren't echoes. They were delayed with surgical precision, shifted in frequency, structured as if deliberately modulated. And then, Earth-based telescopes picked up faint harmonics rippling back through the void, as though Mars itself had become a transmitter, amplifying the signal and returning it across the gulf of space. To those who studied the data, the implication was staggering. Atlas had asked a question, and Mars had answered in its own voice. Suddenly, a world once dismissed as barren and lifeless had entered the conversation. Mars, the silent red witness of the solar system, was now vibrating with the energy of a message not born here, but sent from beyond the stars. Its thin skies shimmered, its dusty ground seemed to hum, as if the planet itself had joined an interplanetary dialogue. Then came the most unnerving revelation. Seismic monitors, relics left behind by past missions, began recording tremors unlike anything ever logged. These were not random quakes. They were rhythmic, steady, deliberate, perfectly synchronized with the pulses of Atlas. The vibrations resonated deep within the planet's mantle, as though the crust of Mars had transformed into a colossal instrument, singing in harmony with the visitor from interstellar space. But the strangeness didn't end there. When scientists translated these frequencies into spectrograms, they revealed haunting shapes, spirals, hexagons, triangles, the very same geometric patterns already shimmering within Atlas's glowing emerald coma. The match was undeniable. This was no coincidence. Mars was not merely echoing a foreign signal. It was answering, speaking with its own subterranean voice. Some researchers suggested that something deep beneath the Martian crust, an ancient structure, a buried ocean, perhaps even a dormant system, had been awakened by Atlas's call. Others dared to whisper a darker possibility, that Mars itself was alive, capable of resonating like a vast cosmic organism stirred awake by a voice from the stars. Whatever the truth, one fact could not be ignored. Mars was responding, and as Atlas pulsed and Mars replied, the resonance began to reach across the void. Earth's own radio telescopes picked up the harmonics, faint but undeniable. Within the static, hidden patterns emerged, shapes and echoes that bore the unmistakable imprint of Atlas's signal, yet altered, as if transformed by the red planet's reply. Independent researchers rushed to share their discoveries. Spectrograms etched with eerie geometries hidden in the bursts of Atlas's signal, but within hours, their accounts vanished without explanation. Governments issued no clarifications, NASA remained silent, yet the truth slipped through the cracks. Humanity was no longer a passive observer. We were eavesdropping on a dialogue not meant for us, a cosmic exchange playing out in full view. And as the patterns sharpened, as Mars's replies grew stronger, a haunting realization settled over the scientific community. Whatever Atlas had asked, Mars had answered. And now, the echoes of that conversation were brushing against Earth itself. Then came a revelation no one expected. For centuries, Mars's tiny moons, Phobos and Deimos, were dismissed as nothing more than captured asteroids, lifeless rocks adrift in orbit. But when Atlas's call stirred Mars into response, something extraordinary awoke. Orbital instruments detected Phobos reflecting bursts of electromagnetic radiation, precise, measured, perfectly synchronized with Mars's pulses, as if functioning as a relay node amplifying the dialogue. Deimos, fainter and further away, reacted in another way. It began to glow. An emerald shimmer flickered intermittently across its surface, captured by Earth-based telescopes as brief flashes against the void. These were no reflections of sunlight. They were structured, timed, deliberate. The moons once thought irrelevant were suddenly participants in the exchange. Scientists scrambled to explain how inert, airless rocks could possibly interact with such signals. But the simplest theory was also the most unsettling. The entire Martian system had awakened, as though every orbiting body, every fragment of stone, had been waiting silently for Atlas's call. At first, the rovers on Mars appeared immune, going about their routines, measuring dust, taking images, transmitting data, unaware that the world beneath their wheels had begun to speak. But as Atlas's pulses grew sharper, the rovers began to falter one by one. Their transmissions fractured, corrupted files filled with streaks of emerald static. Another sent a final blurred image of the Martian horizon, glowing with an unnatural light before vanishing into silence. Engineers on Earth scrambled, firing off command after command in desperate attempts to revive them. None returned. Then came the most chilling discovery. Just before shutting down, one rover transmitted a solitary burst of data, a binary stream that, when decoded, revealed repeating prime numbers. They were identical to the hidden sequences embedded in Atlas's pulses. The implication was undeniable. The rovers had not simply malfunctioned, they had been drawn into the resonance, compelled to echo the same mathematical language binding Atlas to Mars. Our mechanical explorers had, in their final breaths, become part of the message. Soon after, Earth itself began to hear it. Radio telescopes across Australia, South Africa, and Chile intercepted faint bursts woven into the background hum of interplanetary space. At first, they seemed like ordinary static, dismissed as interference. But deeper analysis told a darker story. Within the noise were precise sequences, repeating prime numbers, exactly like those transmitted by the rovers before their silence. Even more unsettling, the signals grew stronger whenever Mars rotated certain regions into view, as if specific parts of the planet's surface were acting as transmission nodes. Independent astronomers rushed to publish their discoveries, only to watch their work vanish hours later. Scrubbed from servers, erased from forums, deleted from archives. But enough evidence slipped through to confirm the unthinkable. The dialogue between Atlas and Mars was no longer confined to the void of space. It had reached Earth, and if we could hear it, perhaps we were meant to. Then the skies themselves became the canvas. Observers reported strange shimmering patterns rippling across the thin Martian atmosphere, visible even through telescopes here on Earth. Spirals, lattices, hexagonal grids, vast fleeting constellations etched in emerald light, flared into being for minutes at a time before dissolving back into darkness. Satellite imagery confirmed the phenomenon, showing the luminous designs synchronized precisely with the rhythm of the pulses exchanged between Atlas and Mars. These geometries were no accident. They carried ratios that aligned with mathematical constants, golden spirals, harmonic proportions, symmetries found in ancient temples and human architecture across cultures. The message was clear and terrifying. Atlas's signal, amplified through Mars, was now broadcasting not only in radiation, but in symbols meant to be seen. Humanity, once a passive spectator, now stood face to face with a communication written across the sky itself. The realization spread like fire across the scientific world. This was not physics by chance. This was intention. This was language. And as the signals intensified, Mars shuddered with seismic activity unlike anything ever recorded, its crust shaking, its mantle vibrating, as though the entire planet had become an instrument in a symphony not of our making. What had once been a frozen, silent desert world now pulsed with rhythmic quakes, rippling across its crust in perfect time with Atlas's transmissions. Scientists quickly realized these tremors were not the random groans of shifting rock, but structured vibrations plunging deep into the mantle, like the planet itself had become a colossal resonant chamber, amplifying the interstellar signal. Then came the most startling revelation. When spectrograms of the seismic waves were converted into visual data, the patterns were unmistakable: spirals, triangles, hexagons, the very same geometries long etched into Atlas's emerald glow. For the first time, experts were forced to confront the unthinkable. Mars was not just echoing Atlas's call, it was shaping it, adding its own geological voice to the dialogue. Something beneath its crust had awakened. The red planet was no longer a passive target. Mars was alive in the signal. Then the phenomenon turned visible, not only through telescopes, but to the human eye. Astronomers and amateur stargazers across the globe began reporting faint emerald glows shimmering above Mars, like auroras painted across alien skies. But these lights were far too precise to be natural. The luminous veils arched across the atmosphere in structured curls, vast emerald ribbons captured by even modest backyard telescopes. The glow wasn't steady, it pulsed, each flare in perfect unison with Atlas's transmissions, as though every burst of energy wrote a fresh line across the Martian heavens. For hours, the red planet burned with emerald fire, cloaked in a living veil of light, a visual testament to the strange communion it now shared with the interstellar wanderer. Some dismissed the display as mere atmospheric ionization. Others saw what science dared not admit. Its precision was too exact, too perfect to be chance. The emerald auroras began to twist themselves into shapes no one could ignore: concentric circles, ladder-like rungs, spirals that seemed to wind into infinity. It was as if the Martian sky had become a living screen, projecting Atlas's signal outward for anyone brave enough to watch. Humanity stared at the red planet's glowing crown in awe, unaware that a quieter, far more unsettling effect was already unfolding on Earth. Radio telescopes, radar arrays, even civilian communication networks began experiencing sudden blackouts, each perfectly timed with the pulses exchanged between Atlas and Mars. Entire data streams collapsed into static, rebooting minutes later, leaving behind only fragments of corrupted files laced with streaks of green noise. Engineers reported the disruptions as unlike anything they had ever seen. The interference rippled across multiple frequencies at once, as though deliberately engineered to overwhelm. Worse still was the pattern. Every blackout was preceded by a faint echo of the Martian resonance, as if the planet's response were bleeding through the void and infecting our systems. Then came the chilling realization. If Earth's instruments were now reacting to the exchange, we were no longer mere observers. We had become part of the resonance, and the question no one dared speak aloud was this: what if our machines weren't simply failing? What if they were being pulled into the signal, just as the Martian rovers had been before? When fragments of the interrupted transmissions were painstakingly reconstructed, the results sent shockwaves through the scientific world. Hidden in the noise were structures too exact to be natural: prime numbers, repeating ratios, harmonics, that mirrored not only cosmic geometry, but the very languages of logic itself. As though the signal had begun to rewrite reality in mathematics, we were only starting to understand. Humanity had crossed a threshold. Mathematicians confirmed that the embedded codes within the resonance matched the very kind of universal markers scientists had long theorized an intelligent civilization might use for first contact. The pulses were not just raw energy, they were information. But what unsettled researchers most was the source of the variations. The original signal came from Atlas, yet the modulation, the subtle alterations that shaped static into structured code, originated from Mars. The red planet wasn't merely mirroring the signal, it was transforming it, speaking with a voice uniquely its own. For the first time in human history, we were bearing witness to a dialogue between an interstellar visitor and a world in our own solar system. And we were listening to a conversation never intended for us. Then came the seismic breakthrough. Data from Mars revealed that the rhythmic tremors did more than shake its surface. They bounced back, echoing from immense depths, as though striking hollow chambers buried beneath the crust. By mapping these wave reflections, scientists uncovered staggering patterns: vast subsurface voids, arranged in geometric alignments too precise to dismiss. Skeptics argued they could be remnants of ancient volcanic systems, but others whispered a far more radical interpretation. The formations appeared engineered, colossal resonant chambers designed not by chance, but with purpose, as if the planet itself had been built to amplify signals. The implication was chilling. Mars had not merely become a participant in Atlas's dialogue. It had always been waiting. A world once dismissed as barren and lifeless was now revealing itself as something far stranger. A vast instrument, perfectly tuned to awaken only when struck by the right frequency from across the stars. And now, that frequency had arrived. But the changes were not confined to Mars alone. Something was stirring in its innermost moon, Phobos. For centuries, it had been regarded as a doomed satellite, spiraling inexorably closer to Mars, destined to one day crash upon its surface. Yet suddenly, its descent accelerated. Tracking stations confirmed that Phobos's orbit was no longer stable. It was shifting, adjusting ever so slightly, in synchrony with the pulses exchanged between Atlas and Mars. Then came the images. High-resolution scans revealed faint glowing fissures spreading across the moon's dusty surface, veins of emerald light crawling outward from beneath its crust. Some scientists claimed it was nothing more than stress fractures caused by tidal forces, but others saw something else entirely: activation. Phobos was no longer behaving like a dead rock. It looked like a mechanism, coming alive, responding to the call. The idea took hold that Phobos, long believed destined to fall, had been designed instead for a hidden purpose. And that purpose was now beginning to awaken before our very eyes. Meanwhile, Earth itself began to feel the resonance. In deserts atop lonely mountain ranges, and even above the open seas, people reported seeing faint green auroras shimmering in skies where no aurora should exist. These luminous veils pulsed in flawless rhythm with Atlas's transmissions, perfectly synchronized with Mars's replies. Amateur radio operators across the globe began capturing bursts of static, threaded with repeating tones, sounds many described as hauntingly melodic, almost like a cosmic chant echoing through the ether. For the first time, humanity was not merely observing Mars's transformation from a safe distance. We were feeling it here, on Earth. The dialogue had spilled across the void, dragging our world into a resonance we could neither command nor escape. And a terrifying question began to spread. If Mars had answered Atlas, would Earth be compelled to answer as well? As anomalies mounted, scholars and historians turned desperately to the past. Ancient records long dismissed as myth suddenly demanded new attention. Sumerians, Egyptians, Mayans, all had left behind stories of twin lights in the heavens, green fires that bled across the skies, gods descending upon the red world in endless cycles of awakening and ruin. Once, these tales were thought to be symbolic, allegories for harvests, celestial movements, or spiritual beliefs. But when compared with the timing of Atlas's pulses and Mars's resonant responses, the parallels became chillingly precise. Carvings depicted twin orbs joined by radiant beams of light. Clay tablets spoke of a green serpent whispering to the red planet until it roared to life. And some inscriptions went even further, etched with spirals, triangles, and lattices identical to the geometric forms now blazing through Atlas's resonance. It began to feel less like mythology and more like memory, a record of our ancestors bearing witness to the very same phenomenon thousands of years ago. If that was true, then Atlas's arrival and its strange communion with Mars was not unique at all. It was part of a cycle, and now that cycle had returned. For months, humanity had watched 3i Atlas defy the laws of nature. It split into two, one fragment streaking toward the sun, the other drawn to Mars. From that moment on, the impossible became undeniable. The pulses we once dismissed as noise revealed themselves as signals, directed, deliberate, intelligent. And then came the answer. Mars, the silent red world we believed barren, replied. It spoke through its atmosphere, through its trembling crust, even through its ancient moons. The planet echoed back the call of the interstellar visitor. But this was no simple call and response. It was dialogue. Seismic waves etched geometry into the very heartbeat of Mars. Auroras painted mathematical symbols across its skies. Even Phobos shifted in orbit, glowing with fissures of emerald fire, as though waking from a slumber that had lasted for millennia. And as the resonance grew, it leapt the void and found us. Earth itself began to shimmer with echoes, green auroras glowing in places no aurora should ever exist. Instruments collapsed under impossible interference. Within the static, whispers of prime numbers and spirals emerged, too precise to be chance. The dialogue had crossed the gulf of space, and whether we were ready or not, we were no longer just observers. We had become part of it. The ancient records now read less like myths and more like warnings. memories etched by civilizations that stood beneath the same sky and witnessed the same cycle long before us. They spoke of a serpent of green light whispering to Mars, of twin fires burning in the heavens, of awakenings that reshaped entire worlds. And if those stories are true, then Atlas has not arrived in our system by chance. It has returned, again and again, as part of a process older than humanity itself. NASA stays silent, data is buried, signals are cut, every leak vanishes behind locked doors. But their silence speaks louder than any press release. They know. They know that 3I Atlas is not a comet, not a rogue wanderer, not a random accident of the cosmos. It is a messenger, a trigger, a presence that stirs dormant worlds into resonance and forces planets to speak. And now that Mars has answered, the question is no longer whether Atlas is alive. The question is, what comes next? Because if Mars has awakened, and if Earth is already beginning to echo its song, then the cycle has only just begun. Atlas sent the signal, Mars answered back. And with every passing pulse, humanity must face the chilling possibility that the next response will not come from a distant world, but from our own. If you're captivated by these revelations, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.